So this is, for the sake of argument, this is the Geoff and Didi podcast, special edition. And my guests today are none other. I've got a panel of top-notch thinkers, effectively a local think tank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or at least like a think armored car.
Like not a tank.
Yeah, maybe not quite a tank.
I always thought of think tank as like a fish tank.
It's like a fish tank. This is more like a think bowl.
This is like a think bowl.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, not like a cereal bowl of thinking.
Right.
To my right here, I've got the legendary Andrew X is here. Andrew, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Outstanding. Good to hear. Got Major League and Craig over here.
Yeah, don't give it away. Glad to see you, Geoff. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure's mine. And then Dangerous Dave is joining me too. Dave, this is your first time doing anything that would be called a podcast.
This is one of the strangest things I've ever done.
Right. And you've done some, this is, in the heterosexual world, this is one of the strangest things you've ever been involved with.
Geoff.
Yeah.
I've done way stranger things than this. Today, actually, yeah.
So I'm glad everyone made it. After we get done with here, let's go to the bar.
Yeah.
But the news of recent days right now is Dave. How do you pronounce
Charlie Hebdo?
Charlie
Hebdo.
Okay. He's not just being kind of being pretentious, but he speaks French.
I am pretentious.
You are, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. But so the terror attacks at, if I can call them that, at Charlie Hebdo. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
You've read the word a million times, and of course it doesn't read like
We say Charlie. It's okay to say Charlie Hebdo.
Okay. But the recent attacks, terrible, tragic, attacks, and it's a serious thing. But I saw that, and I welled up a lot of emotions. It's a subject, whatever you want to call it, radical Islam in Europe or whatever has been a subject that's caught my attention lately. But I think this really is a little bit of a cultural. Oh, I don't know if
Watershed.
I think this is an event. Actually, I really do, because it's unusual. Dave, if you want to summarize best you can what your understanding of the events were, not particularly cared about what happened today, where it sounds like they got him. But.
Okay, that's so. From my reading of the old print media, two Algerian French brothers, and a third, I can't remember I'm not sure how he was related or connected to them, but they carried assault weapons, dressed in black, entered the offices of Charlie Hebdo, which is a satirical magazine, which was, I guess, quite frequently had run cartoons mocking the Prophet Muhammad, and also various radical Islamic leaders.
And other religious.
Yeah, in addition to the other satirical things they did.
Okay, well, I'm only aware of the...
Okay, yeah.
So what prompted this event.
Right.
And I think 12 employees? No, maybe something, and a couple of policemen.
I think there were 12. I think some of them have been police.
A couple of policemen, and then an editor and some cartoonists. So those were the casualties in the initial attack.
Yeah, and then they fled and were at large for a while, took a hostage, and some other things happened.
Now, if I'm correct, this is something that these cartoonists had understood was a possibility, that they were not to.
There was death threats. There was
right.
There was a lot of
this was them taking a stand and saying we're going to do it anyway.
Yes,
yeah. The whole point in them doing it was the fact that they were receiving bashback. I think
right, like making fun of North Korea when North Korea says you can't make
exactly. And
right.
I think the one little snippet I read was that the first thing that they did when they showed up was they held some woman who was an employee or whatever. At gunpoint, they forced her to enter in the key code to get in the building, because it was like a secured building for exactly this reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was not just that. Yeah, that's as I understand it too. I've seen some of the cartoons. They're as cartoons go, they're really, really offensive. I mean, I saw one that depicted the anus of the Prophet Muhammad as like a flower, and I mean, it was very, very rudimentary drawing.
Sure, sure.
But
Yeah.
and then there's one that I put on my Facebook right now that's got the Prophet Muhammad with an open mouth wet kiss with somebody who maybe is
Looks like Jesus.
No,
Oh, I saw that one. Okay.
oh, did you see that one?
That may not have been from that.
This one looks like you, actually.
Oh, well,
yeah.
okay, well, good.
I mean, it kind of did, but
There was one where he was all emaciated in a wheelchair, being pushed by like a rabbi or something like that.
oh, really?
Also, which is
Okay.
Which is probably
Yeah.
So I didn't, again, not to excuse any of it, but I'm just trying to get a grasp on the situation here. Their satire was more, we're going to be offensive because these people, they're pushing buttons. So we're going to be offensive, but they weren't like a clan group saying all Muslims are terrorists, or I'm trying to make a distinction here between.
It was they weren't just dedicated to ragging on Muslims either. I mean, they satire all kinds of things. I mean, they've released cartoons about like a Catholic church and things like that too in the past.
There's a guy I really like who describes himself as a neocon, which I don't like, but it has kind of a different meaning because he's a gay guy from England, right? So it's a weird thing to be.
Right.
He's one of those kinds of neocons. But Douglas Murray, badass conservative in my idea, but he describes. I find him very credible, but he was describing Charlie Hebdo as a leftist, anti-racist, satirical organization.
Okay.
Like that was, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's, but I've heard parallels between it and The Onion. I'm not really familiar with their work,
Right.
but.
And humor doesn't translate sometimes between cultures and languages.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know their body of work, but one of the many facets of this, which was, I'm a comic book fan, and I'm interested in comic books. So in social media, I follow a lot of comic book creators, and of course they had their big, they kind of rallied behind, like they rallied in support of cartoonists.
Right.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that they're, excuse me. I appreciate that they are, supporting the victims, you know what I mean? I appreciate that they're on the right side as I view it, you know what I mean? But I think it's just a false dilemma, the idea that this is an example of once again, cartoonists are under attack, right? Like, it isn't cartoonists and it isn't satirists. I think the problem is, the main problem for me from a Western culture point of view is that we as a society want to make excuses for and ignore the fact that they are, if you take them at face value, they're doing this to defend the honor of the Prophet Muhammad and enforce Sharia blasphemy laws.
Right.
Anyone who commits these blasphemies needs to be killed. And we say, well, they, we're already, I mean, the mayor of Paris or whatever said something to the effect of, talking about, well, everyone rushes out to say, well, this isn't a Muslim thing.
Right.
They all say, and it's like, well, it doesn't mean to say that it's an all Muslim thing or whatever, but you have to give the perpetrators the credit for.
It's a Muslim thing to them. It was a Muslim thing to the guys who walked into the.
Yeah, I mean, they declared. I mean, that's what they did. I mean, they literally said Allah Akbar
Right, sure.
when they were doing it. So at least give them, at least respect that they think that's why they're doing it. Like, instead of putting your excuse on them or whatever, which happens.
Right. Well, so that's why I'm trying to figure out the distinction here, because again, I'm not trying to excuse anybody. There's no reason for violence.
And let me lay
a solution
the ground
to
rule.
speech.
Nobody in this room thinks that there is.
No, understood.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm saying is that, for instance, that doesn't make. Again, I'm woefully unprepared for this, but that doesn't make, just because somebody gets shot doesn't make what they were saying, doesn't make them a hero.
No,
but by default,
course, yeah,
by default, you could.
Right.
If somebody went and shot Westboro Baptist Church,
Yep.
I would certainly condemn that, but I wouldn't put up an God hates fags image on my Facebook in solidarity with the guys who got shot.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Because you got to kind of make that distinction that this action is not okay, but that doesn't mean these guys are cool either.
It doesn't mean that they're right. It doesn't make it doesn't add truth to them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Just because.
Although it's a right to say it.
No, absolutely.
Actually, maybe I would put a God hates fags sticker.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Is I don't want to add any legitimacy to fucked up speech just because this was the outcome. I mean, they have the right to say it, and well, again, that's maybe in France they don't have the right. I don't know exactly how their laws work, but in my mind, you got a right to say whatever you want. That doesn't make what you say free from repercussions. Getting shot is not an acceptable repercussion by any means.
Right, of course.
But, I want to try to make sure that, I'm not falling into the trap of trying to defend somebody at the wrong level. I can defend their right to say it. I can say I can horribly disagree with what they said.
Right.
I don't know in this case because...
We don't know what they were saying.
Because I don't know what they're saying. But I think there's a difference... Well, I'm really trying to articulate the difference between like hating on a religion in general,
right,
and poking buttons at extremists.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's where the real argument is that are extremists the true believers of a religion, or are the people in the middle that because the whole thing with the reason people would blame Muslim as a religion in general is that there are passages in the Quran that say to kill non-believers, and
there's passages in the Bible that say that too.
Well, I'm not defending Christianity. I'm saying
right.
What I'm saying is that that's what people think. When they're thinking. And so, I mean, that said, is somebody that's an extremist that follows everything that the book that they claim to follow says? I mean, are they the real religious people, or are the people that pick and choose? Are they the sort of
right
two-timers?
Well, yeah, that's the case in any religion,
right?
But right, of course, right.
No, that's right. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, so I mean, when you have Muslim people that say not everyone believes this,
right.
It's just the extremists. It's like, okay, well, but your book does kind of.
It does say this, right?
It does say this.
Okay, so I'm not sure that's entirely fair, because I would there's plenty of texts that are 2,000 years old that don't stand up to modern day morality, and so
right,
and
but then also how many groups enforce those texts? Because there's people that go to church every day, but that and read those texts,
right?
But there's only one religious group in the world today that's doing stuff like this, really.
Well,
no, that's not. I don't know. That's true. How many abortion clinics have been bombed by Christians?
Yeah, and plenty, and even recently there's been some. But
if you think, we don't know, right? Because we have.
Matter of scale. They're on a maybe Geoff's thinking on a matter of scale.
Yeah, it is.
I think that it seems to me that one of the things that we don't see because we're in it is that we've made a cult of the freedom of expression. And so we're a little blind to some realities. And this may seem like a ridiculous analogy, but you're not legally entitled to yell fire in a crowded place. There are all kinds of limits on expression. And I think we're a little dishonest with ourselves, or we've fallen under the spell of a particular idea here. Germany has laws against hate speech because of their history.
Right.
And
France does too, actually.
And really, I don't really understand, except for the power of money, understand why we ever took our First Amendment freedoms to include pornography or lap dancing or a whole host of other things.
Well, right, because we do draw the line at obscenity. We
don't
do draw
fit the political freedoms which our Constitution was trying to defend.
Right. Freedom of speech. Well, but see, this is exactly now here's the thing is what you're omitting there is that there is, nations have laws, right? And it's the laws of the nation that determine what freedom of speech is exactly legal and not legal, right? Now, in France, you know what I mean? Or we'll say in the United States, it's not legal to yell fire in a crowded theater, but it is legal to publish a cartoon about Muhammad. Right. You know, assuming things are very similar in France, right? Now there are nations that use whose constitutions and laws are much more closely based on Sharia law and Muslim principles, where it's state sanctioned law that you cannot lampoon the prophet.
Right.
But you know what I mean? So and you could argue that that's okay in those places where that is the agreed upon law of the land. In France, it's not the law of the land. These people in France, they were not subject to legal action. They were,
but okay. The reason why yelling fire in a crowded theater is illegal is because there is a clear and dangerous effect. And in a way, what we're talking about with these representatives of social ideas, religious ideas, whatever you want to call them, that are to us strange, out of place in the modern world. They are a fact they are an objective fact that they exist, that they have access to weaponry. Right. How they got those automatic weapons in France, that's a question that bothers me. How they're able to sneak around with weapons, because I thought France had a better handle on that kind of thing, but apparently not.
Well,
and so they exist.
Fair share
they exist. They and it seems to me, I don't want to say Charlie Hebdo brought it on itself, but in a way they did bring it on themselves, and they were not following what I learned in kindergarten sort of rule.
No,
you shouldn't be that nasty to other people, no matter how stupid their beliefs are, unless there's really a really good reason. And I don't think there really was.
Where was it where you can look up a list of Westerners who have been killed for mocking Islam. And I think that what they were doing was a little bit based on that. It was specifically, was it the Netherlands or something? Where did the guy?
Well, there was the Theo van Gogh.
Yeah.
The
filmmaker.
Right. But then there was also the Danish cartoons. It was almost the exact same thing where they were, which Charlie Hebdo was, doing I think that they were trying to carry the torch that because they didn't want the extremists, terrorists to win, silence them.
But I'm actually, what I would really take it to is this whole idea of winning or losing. It's and what we're seeing, it seems to me, is that France as a nation, more or less, that you can say that this group of people who rises up and goes into the street represents the nation, and we've got that representation problem. You've got some people who are very eager in France to sort of say, they are saying, Je suis Charlie Hebdo.
Yeah.
And they want to get out there, and now it's like, so it is a culture war. So
sure
human beings are always ready to engage in culture wars.
Well,
and we are always ready to engage in aggression, violence, whatever. And I'm just questioning whether this is the appropriate place to make a stand.
Okay, so so let me explore that a little bit. So if a cartoonist comes out and says, okay, I have a problem with this religion, and specifically them telling me what I can and can't print, because I don't even belong to their religion, right? And I go out and I publish a cartoon of Muhammad raping a little boy. Yes, I'm probably playing with fire. Whether or not I deserve to be shot, absolutely not, right? But that's your conscience. That's where you're going with it. You know what I mean? That's and whether you're making that stand on principle, who knows, whatever, right? But if the same extremists say you can't even draw Muhammad in a pleasant light, you can't draw Muhammad at all,
right? And
we're really going to just impose our rules on you at all levels, then sooner or later you got to say, no, wait a minute. I don't belong to your religion. You don't get to say that about me. Kim Jong-un doesn't get to say, I can't make a movie about North Korea. And you can't say, I can't make a cartoon about Muhammad.
What it is originally they do that because they have a big thing against idol worship.
Sure.
Like they think that's one of the reasons,
silent mode.
One of the ways Christianity got, went wrong is, Christians started building, statues of Jesus on the cross, and
right.
They became made of a human being, and so really what it is that it's basically the same argument that Christians use to argue against. Well, no, to argue against gay marriage, where it's like,
how so?
Well, where it's like, okay, you're not part of our religion, but you don't have the right to do that because it sullies our religion. And
I see where you're going with that. I mean, it's imposing your religious beliefs on someone else
that doesn't even claim to.
And I'm not saying that the appropriate backlash is to print, Muhammad, raping somebody.
But here's the thing, and what people are getting all bent out of shape is that, like Geoff said, it seems like, at least in the media, that we're exposed to that Muslims are the ones that, for the most part, and to some extent, it's probably true, for the most part, having, engaging in the violence and things of this nature, where they're imposing their sort of beliefs on other people. Right. There are terrorist attacks happening over images of Muhammad and things like that.
It's absolutely true. I mean, you
could
argue that the West we're militarily committing terrorism. You could make that argument,
right?
But the idea that there's Timothy McVeigh's in Iraq is ridiculous.
What I'm getting at is that religion is a real powerful thing, and people, when people believe in a religion, they're believing that basically what's in this book is true. What's the ideas that my culture have given me about basically things that no one could ever know are true, and nobody else is right about this.
Right.
I mean, there's pretty much no room for the intermingling of religions.
No.
I mean, people try to pretend like
I've said that before.
It's
laughable that we get along or pretend to get along.
Right. Well, but the other thing is that it's not necessarily the religion that's causing people to be violent. I mean, they're definitely using it as an excuse,
right?
And it's definitely what it's over. But the thing about it is that if you compare it, like, for example, the Bible has passages, also says kill non-believers. It also has passages that say you can have Hebrew slaves for 7 years, but if they leave them, you get to keep their wife and their kids and all that shit. All kinds of shit that's just fucked that we don't believe in. Right. But we don't focus on any of that. We don't impose on any of that because I think that for the most part, most Christian nations in the world are they're pretty well off. They're not in areas of the world that are really like war torn or starved of resources or things like that. Whereas like all those fucking crazy desert tribes in the Middle East,
well,
they can't grow shit. They all have
they'll have
several different governments fighting over the area that they're trying to live.
No, well,
actually, I'm concerned about geography, and so you look around the band of climate and heat all around the globe, and people are much more violent. And actually, there are some predictions that have been made as our climate warms, we'll be more violent too. I get really pissed off in the summertime,
like those Hawaiians.
Fucking Hawaiians.
They're always.
Well, Sicilians.
But that's what I'm saying. But what I'm getting at is that,
and Greeks.
There are parts of the world that are just fucked, right? So people are raised and they grow up, believing that the world is just a fucked place. Their intensity is just cranked to 11 all the time.
Yeah.
And so those areas of the world are going to.
And religion can become a catalyst for that, or a focal point.
Right. What I'm getting at is if things all of a sudden became that way, right? If the United States became a desert, and all of a sudden we had, people invading, we had different, factions warring, we had a civil war going on, the South rose again, or whatever the fuck happens,
Right.
You're going to see a lot more shit like, religious radicals lashing out because, religion, the prominence of a religion rises when disparity and, desperate.
It's true.
Desperate situations.
Right. No, affluence is a buffer.
Or the crazy side, at least.
Right. And the religion definitely is a problem because it's giving them an excuse. It's this thing that says, hey, kill people that don't believe this.
Right.
Cut women's clits off or whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
And that's a problem, but it's not necessarily what's causing them to be the majority, the major violent religion today. If that's
No, of course. Everybody. I'm completely open to acknowledging that it's a cultural beef, right? Because the people that perpetrated this were apparently French Algerian or whatever, but they were in France, living in France. I mean, they weren't living in Algeria or wherever else, you know. I mean, they come from there, but they were here or were in the West when I say here, but sure. I mean, you know, it's old news that religion is you use religion to rally the people. You know what I mean? Like, It's old news that you say, hey, you know, wars, frankly, there is no such thing as religious wars that I'm aware of, because, you know, like the Crusades or whatever were.
I see this from another perspective suddenly, and I think it's really a testosterone problem. These are young men, and young men are naturally violent creatures. And so if we just use Depo-Provera on them and get them through those violent years, and then the problem would be solved.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what, like, you know, the average Palestinian, I think, is like 14 years old, right? Like,
because they just die.
Well, they die young. Yeah. Right. You know, and so.
Well, they had a lot of kids. Some of those Middle East nations went through a huge population explosion. And so they've got a lot of problems economically, demographically. What do you do with all these young people?
I wonder what the average age of sub-Saharan African is. I bet it is really young. You know what I mean? Like, especially with.
So there's a point. I don't know if it's too much of a tangent here, but there's a point that I've been mulling around in my head. There's when you talk about these kind of relations, there's obviously, if you make somebody because of their race, let's just call that wrong, okay? Right? Yeah. And let's say that also, you know, having to beef against somebody because of their religion, just on its face, just that is wrong too. I wouldn't not hire somebody or not let somebody rent for me or whatever, you know, based on their religion, right? And so, and then these are all fundamental principles that our country, and I think, you know, much of the world is that, you know, there's tolerance, and there's, hey, we can all accept each other, right?
Right.
And what you do at your church, your synagogue, or in your home is none of my business. How you worship is cool with me, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that everything that gets done in the name of religion is excusable, right?
No.
But what we're talking about here, when you're talking about these, this religion to me is kind of a weird paradox, because everybody will say, well, I'm doing God's will.
Yeah.
I'm not even making my own. The basis of most religions, I'm not even making my own morality. I get my morality from God. He tells me what's right and what's wrong, and I follow that.
Right.
And for you, that may be different because you've got a different God, or you're reading a different book.
Right.
We could be reading the same book and have completely different interpretations of it. How many Christian denominations are there? You know, but the paradox there is that I can change my religion anytime I want and decide I'm going to take a different word of God. And so you really do make your own morality.
Well,
you can say, oh, I don't want to be this religion, or I want to be that religion. And you can still say, I'm getting my morality from God,
that's the argument.
But you chose it.
The argument is you're convincing yourself that you're actually getting your morality from an external source.
Right.
When you take on a religion instead, when in actuality, you really are just coming up with it.
Right. And then you get all that justification, like, oh, well, God said it's cool, man. I'm
right, because it gives you that. Because when you come to a decision, you know on whether something is moral or not, you've convinced yourself that it's coming from, you know, a higher power. So you're right. You feel more right.
If there's something purely negative coming out of that stream somewhere, there's terrorist attacks in the name of religion. You can call that out as bad, right? You can say, well, I mean, you can look at the complexities of it and say, okay, so these guys are in a bad situation, and there's all these things going on. There's all these different factors involved, but violence is bad, no matter how you cut it, right?
It's a big there's a divide, I think, maybe between you and me on that, because I'm a moral absolutist. The reason that I am not an atheist is because I don't think we can decide what's right or wrong. I mean, we can interpret it, obviously, but what's right or wrong exists without my interpretation of it. Like, I'm not the one who... Violence isn't bad because I don't like it. Violence is bad whether I'm there to observe it or not.
I think you and I talked about this on a previous podcast.
Well,
before.
we did, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't have the... So I kind of don't... I don't agree with that, or particularly care about Because you can choose. Because of course, these attackers would tell you that they were acting in.
Oh, no, I don't think we're disagreeing there.
Yeah,
I don't think we're disagreeing.
No, but they would tell you that they're acting in alongside in coercion with whatever the tenets of Islam or whatever. And what I don't, and I guess I guess it is a cultural thing for me, because I say you're breaking the laws of France. I mean, again, and you're also breaking the laws of that you're breaking God's law or national law by killing someone. But
I think you can be a more moral absolutist and not think it's being handed down. I think you could logically deduce those without relying on it coming from above.
There's an area between moral absolutism and moral relativism, where it's like, where it is, apart from you, but it's it is external to you, but it's generated by everybody in all people as a whole. Whereas, like,
there would be no right and wrong if there weren't people, right? I mean, there's no right and wrong on Mars.
There would be though.
But is there right and wrong on Mars?
Right, that's what he and I were arguing about last podcast. Like, if everybody was happy with anything that happened and no one was ever hurt by anything, and everyone was, would there be right and wrong?
I mean, you have to have action for you know what I mean. So otherwise, a rock is not right or wrong. You know what I mean? Just because there is moral absolutes, and this is a tangent, but just because there is absolutes doesn't mean everything is either right or wrong.
Or that everything falls. There could be moral absolutes that conflict with each other in a certain situation.
I'd like to take it back to the attack.
Please.
And okay, so we're
telling you to shut up, Greg.
No, I'm not.
Enough philosophy 101. Let's get
I guess I'm a little puzzled by, on the one hand, we're making various claims about what morality is, what it isn't, and it seems to me that from the most basic sense of just kind of human fairness morality, somebody else is doing something bad, making threats. You don't go up and say, well, F you,
I don't
bring
care.
it on.
Yeah.
That's not the way. That's just your what is it? Just, I can't think of my verb
hot
here.
Potato.
Maybe it's hot potato.
I don't know. No. Well, I was looking at your fucking hands for the record.
It's a podcast. People can't see his hands.
It's like, each person is stepping it up to where we actually escalate. Thank you.
Yes.
And this was escalating. That's what I think is going on. And I think actually, in a way, what's happening in France is that, and this actually ties in a little bit more to Geoff's way of thinking than I am comfortable with, but the French are kind of unhappy with the level of Muslims residing in their country who are essentially remaining culturally apart.
Yeah.
And that's an experiment that's being run in the West, and I'm afraid it's not working out very well. And I always like to think, well, here, at least in this country, we're doing as good a job as probably can be done over the long period of time to actually live side by side and kind of form this amalgamation. But I'm not sure that's working out.
I think people naturally segregate themselves. I mean, even if you look at any city, I mean, like, there's the Asian district, there's the Italian side of town, there's like all the people that essentially look each other and speak the same language. All kind of stick together. But it's still, it's like people are able to get jobs. And in France, from what I understand is that oftentimes, if you aren't French, there really is a kind of a prejudice. So you're not going to be able to break into middle class. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that France or places like France are smaller. And
they're more homogeneous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're homogeneous enough, everybody's happy and everybody loves each other.
I think you see the same thing like within states in the U.S. Like,
sometimes we're a mixed bag.
We're very
even Texas is mixed. It's weird, It's like
very, very. I mean, nothing. Well, I mean, if you think historically,
I don't think there's anywhere in the U.S. that has a culture
all the black people stick together for the most part.
Yeah, out of self-defense, but
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's fine. But I mean, no, I get that. But what I'm saying is that, like, I don't think there's any location or any region of the U.S. where they're all as alike as certain countries can be, like in small countries.
Well, no, because Asia, we're different because we're all the same law.
That melting pot, bro. It's that melting pot.
You know what? Here's the thing: this is why multiculturalism is failing. Like David Cameron, the Prime Minister of England, said it was a failed experiment. Right? The reality is, it's true. The reality is that despite what I was taught in school, not all cultures are equal. They're not all the same. Some are, and I heard a guy. You guys haven't seen this guy on YouTube called fucking like Thunderfoot or something? Have you seen this guy? He debates. He's an atheist and he debates feminists, but he debates religious theism questions and stuff like that. I just ran into it, but he was alluding to the fact that and he's more of what maybe Andrew's state of mind would be on morality or something. But he's kind of says there are, what did he call it? There are things in evolutionary terms. There are things that work better, that are more productive, and have produce a better result. So even if you don't want to say that, even if you're not comfortable saying that that the punishment for, I say that the punishment for being an apostate is death. As a rule, is a bad rule. Right. But even if you don't feel comfortable pronouncing that it's a bad rule and say, well, that's how they do it and that's okay because that's their culture, right? Then you can still say it produces a shittier result, even if it's just in evolutionary terms or whatever. And that's the thing is being, strict Orthodox Islam is shitty. The places where it exists are shitty places, and France has a right to not want its shittiness in their space.
It's complicated because everybody's place in the world, like as far as the race you're born into, the culture you're born into, the religion you're either born into or raised in or choose later down the line. It's kind of a culmination of human events, kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, right. So a guy being born into a village doesn't have a lot of choice on that,
Right.
That doesn't mean you can't change it, and that doesn't mean you can't figure it out. But there's got to be some sort of understanding and bridging of the gaps.
Well, but this is what pisses me off about Islam is that it is the most intolerant of the Abrahamic faiths. It is.
I think it has the most. It may today have the most extreme extremists, but I don't think the general population of them is like that. I think Islam is the second largest.
Yeah, I don't think,
in the world.
Like I said,
that's a lot of people to pin that label on.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily just the religion that's causing it. Like I said before, it's
no, it's culture. It's culture.
Yeah,
I accept that, but I'm saying the Islamic faith.
Right. No, and you're right. There's it's not necessarily caused by the religion, but the end result is that if you're looking at trying to prevent things like this, and there's a correlation. At least today there is, and. Before
we go too far, I wanted to back up to his point about the escalations real quick, if I might. So I totally get where you're going with that. So obviously, you've got some guys that are real pissed, and in a tumultuous fucking part of history, they're, obviously for extreme Islam right now, it's kind of a shaky period, right? I can get it, whatever. And do you push those buttons? Do you light that match? Do you sit there and say, "Bring it on, guys! Bring it on! Bring it on! Bring it on!"
Right?
Is that a smart move? Maybe not. Is it the passionate, compassionate thing to do? Is it really making the world better?
No,
maybe not. Right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sure. Fine. So
I'm an old man.
So let me make a comparison to The Interview, the movie about North Korea,
right.
And. So these guys make a movie about North Korea. North Korea says, "No, you're pushing our buttons now. We're going to bomb you if you do that." Right?
There's a difference.
Okay, that's okay. That's what I'm trying to work out is the difference.
Yeah. What is it? What is the difference?
Well, to me, and of course, how we quantify these things is certainly open to debate or whatever or discussion. But it seems to me, and I've read some opinion pieces recently about the interview, and saw some clips. And North Korea could hardly get worse. There you have this thin crust of people benefiting from the starvation and the forced the political imprisonment of most of the nation, basically.
So they deserve it more.
Well, okay. So it's different.
If if we allow, say, or if our system allows a private company to push their buttons, we're going to have to. Obviously, Sony was taking the cautious route, and then was pushed through political and cultural forces to say, "Oh no, we really are going to stand up." But it seems to me that really North Korea is such a bad actor, and of course having nuclear weapons, that there's a more imminent danger. Or a more, it's more justifiable, it seems to me, in my trying to consider all human beings as worthy of some kind of respect and care. That actually the bulk of North Korea's population is being harmed by their government.
Fair, but
that's different.
But on the flip side, if North Korea deserves to be mocked and deserves to have their buttons pushed because they're so horrible and they've got nukes. Also, they've got nukes, so do you really want to push that button? So, I would rather push the buttons of guys with AK-47s than push the buttons of guys with nukes.
Except that
because
here's the thing
there's
about
a
that.
bigger retaliation involved.
North Korea isn't a danger to pretty much anybody else outside of a very
fine. Let's say hypothetically.
But that is an important point because.
And we're talking about the difference between leadership that is really sort of rational. Even the craziest religious leaders are generally protecting their own heinies and their best interests. And it's the children and the losers who get to strap on the explosive vests. Right. Kim Jong-un is not going to bring down his house upon himself for the sake of defending his honor. I don't believe so.
No, but
He's just bluffing.
But the thing is,
exactly.
but also the thing is that it's a nation that, and when
exactly.
And I appreciate that difference. I understand it.
It's a nation as opposed to religion. It's they're not really a danger. So when you make fun of Kim Jong Un, you're not really sticking your dick in a hornet's nest. You're going to make him make a statement that's going to say we're going to have 1,000 9/11s on America, or whatever, and he does that. Monthly at least, know, and so nobody's scared of North Korea. There aren't a bunch of North Korean populations in other nations around the world trying to maintain their North Koreanness and
fair. It is a different dynamic, but there's got to be some line somewhere where you just don't give in to demands. I mean,
you're right.
Sure. I said,
I don't think you should in either case. The thing is that it's everybody. Nobody has, like you said before. Do they have a right to be mocked, or do they deserve it? Everybody deserves to be mocked.
Well,
absolutely everybody.
You don't. Whether or not you deserve it, you don't have the right to not be offended.
Well, but it's also the level of mockery too. I mean,
right.
It sounds like the Charlie Hebdo images were gross on any sort of. I mean,
right? Just even if you're offensive for offensive's sake.
Even if you're a cancer patient, what I'm saying, my point. Even if you're a cancer patient, someone goes up to you, oh, little Baldy, you got the cancer.
Right.
I mean,
I'd kick your ass. I would.
Right. In a sense, like even they kind of they deserve that because it's just kind of like whatever they don't. What doesn't deserve to happen is to have them turn around and shoot them in the face with an AK-47 or whatever.
Well, I don't think they deserve to be.
They don't deserve it.
I think that's an improper.
No, but right.
Yeah.
No, it's right. Everybody in here would call a person that did that an asshole.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is they don't have the right to not have that. You don't have the right to not have that happen to you. You don't have the right to not have somebody come up to you and say something awful.
Well, yeah, rights are a funny term. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, like,
well, we have legal processes. If somebody steps over the line and we have these defined.
Sure, if there's stuff,
and I have the right to go to court and say you have unfairly in an illegal way.
Right.
Harmed my reputation.
Again, I think again,
right, but that's lying about somebody. I mean, it's a difference. It's like there is a point where you can't.
There's abuse that is illegal. There is if you just go to some stranger.
Right, but I'm not talking about its legality or not. We're talking about like whether someone deserves it.
But we're in a situation here where I'd flip it.
I don't think anybody deserves to be treated that way. Because remember, I'm back in kindergarten, and I'm actually, I was teaching little kids today, and I'm thinking I thought about this. There was these little boys, and they're like singing a song, and they're kind of like a little group. And there's one other little guy, and he's singing his song, and then he ends up getting his feelings hurt because these guys are kind of a group, And so you've got, even down there, you've got these little different groups of people wanting power, and suddenly there's this, pretty close to violence, actually. And so we're not really much different here.
I know, but we're all, yes, we are. This is
I
so
don't
weird.
know that we are.
No, this is so weird. I mean, honestly, I would put forth to you that the four spoiled Western white people in the room right now are going out of our way to, like.
I'm not defending Geoff.
No, I know, but you're intellectually defending.
No, I am not. I am not at all. The people actually doing the violence need to be pursued with all, all power, all the power of the state. But there has to be some kind of level at which a group of people, a civilization, engages in civilized behavior. And actually, I'm getting offended and pissed off by the number of times you guys use the F word.
Yeah, okay.
I'm really offended by that, and that's a shift in our culture.
Right,
and I think it's all the fault of those liberals back in the 1960s and 70s.
Right. But you have...
It's corrupted our society.
Flower power.
It's aggression. It's aggression.
Okay.
It's just monkey aggression.
You are
really
demeaning the subject when you say that, though, respectfully. Because you like you're saying, but you're saying, well, sure, nobody should commit violence, but there has to be a limit to what you can say and do, is what you're saying. Here's the thing. There is one. There is one, and it's whatever the fuck France's rules are, and those
that's coming dangerously close to moral relativism there, Geoff.
No. There's God's laws and there's man's laws. I really think, and this is the thing is the people who thought they were carrying out God's laws were wrong. They weren't just differently informed; they were wrong. God's laws. Well, never mind that, but. They do draw a line. You can't say fire in a crowded theater,
right? Yeah. That we draw the line at like slander and libel or whatever,
right?
You can't.
So there
you
is
can't say
line.
Lies about somebody.
But and the reason it's a culture war is because these people said no, that France's laws don't. We serve a greater master than France, and we're not going to wait for. We're going to defend our God's honor and do this. And sure, not every Muslim would do that, or even not most of them, or even barely any of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the problem isn't that. It is that you get a few crazy. I mean, I'll grant you they're crazies and they're wackos and they're nut jobs. You know what I mean? Who do this? And then you get the wider group that says, well, they shouldn't have been pushed so hard. You know what I mean? Maybe we shouldn't have fucked with them so bad. Yeah. And then you get the wider group than that says, well, I wouldn't do that if I were you, and the goddamn terrorists win by that. And they are not right, and they are not just, and they shouldn't have done that.
Well, I objected to the whole idea of winning versus losing because really even the nation state is becoming, well, you're not going to like this, but in some ways the nation state is becoming somewhat obsolete. You've got these societies, people can travel so easily from one place to another.
Well, they can in Europe.
Well, and they can here too, and we're.
That's awfully abstract, respectfully.
Well, I just think that I think what you're trying to do, Geoff, is you're trying to draw a line between, and we can say, okay, this culture, which has produced this religion, whatever, this is where if we can cut this off and if we can sort of isolate this, we'll be safe from the crazy violence. And I don't think that's really possible.
Well, but I would just add this, and I'll shut up, give someone else a chance to speak. But the Charlie Hebdo, whatever, didn't go to Algeria and set up shop, and
the French did conquer it, though.
I know. Oh, how many hundred years ago that was? I mean, that's
not too many.
Well, okay, only a couple hundred years ago. You know what I mean? So. Again, you're saying they had it coming or whatever.
No, I'm not saying they had it coming. I'm just saying that there are understandable connections and results of different behaviors and choices. And I don't think Charlie Hebdo is worth the huge march in France. I also don't think, of course, that we need to say, oh, we were terrible people. Oh, yes, we deserve to have these crazy idiots do violence on us. And then we should even talk about where did the weapons come from. You know, what is this? The ability of an individual.
They could have killed them with box knives.
We have our own
They could have killed them
crazy
with box
terrorists
knives
now because it's so easy to get weapons of mass destruction, and that's a crazy thing.
Yeah,
How did civilized people ever ever, for the sake of money, make it possible for every nutcase.
There's a ton of weapons makers in Europe. And
well, I know, but I'm not blaming any one country. I'm just
saying it's not. How do they get them? Isn't all that difficult to work out? I mean, it's just
okay. So the first thing I said when I jumped in here was that like I wanted to distinguish between and like you have saying these guys have absolutely no right to storm in with guns and shoot all these people. Absolutely not acceptable. That doesn't make what the cartoons were saying not jerks. They could have been saying they were being jerks just to be jerks, right? And I understand that, and it's a complicated issue, especially with religious relations and race relations and cultural relations around the world, and it's a time for that, right? But personally, if somebody tells me I can't do something, my knee-jerk reaction is to do it, and I get that, right? And I get that, and I get if and like the South Park guys made their episode with Muhammad where they put him in a friggin' bear costume and didn't show him the whole time, right? Or whatever, just to try to push their point.
Right.
And I think that reaction, there's a place for it. There's a place for saying, no, you can't tell me what to do.
Right.
You're not the boss of me. This is not.
Yes.
This is, I mean, where you want to make that stand, pick your battles. Yeah. Is a little more, I think, is really the issue. Yeah, but I think that's a reaction that has its place in humanity, is to say no. You don't get to tell me.
There is some honor in it. Yeah, I mean,
when we're working it out. I mean, this is part of the process of working it out. Like, how are we going to respond? How will they respond?
Right. And do you keep escalating? Do you call a truce?
Well, and oftentimes I don't think that just because Charlie Hebdo might not be the ideal poster boy for for the subject, and
but there never will be one.
No, there never will be. But that's the thing. Oftentimes, when like this,
it's a pretty good one though. I
don't think it's terrible. I'm saying maybe it's not ideal, but maybe some of the shit that they've done has been a little more.
I don't like Muhammad's anus as a flower. If that's true, that really bothers me. That's upsetting to me.
Yeah. Well, it's really lewd. I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's juvenile. It's
right. But I mean, whatever. What I'm saying is that. Maybe it's not the ideal poster boy, but then it doesn't necessarily mean that the conversation that springs out because of it is unnecessary or doesn't need to happen or is bad.
Well,
it's like what's his name? The guy that died in New York by the police takedown.
Choked
Eric Gardner. Yeah. I mean. There's a lot of fucked up things about that. The cops probably shouldn't have been arresting him. He wasn't doing anything, all that. But it was an accident. He didn't really die at the scene. He wasn't choked to death. He died an hour later in the hospital. There's all this stuff that makes it not really the greatest example of police brutality necessarily.
Right. It wasn't.
There's never going to be a perfect example.
Right.
Of stuff like this,
but I mean,
they're literally much better examples.
There are way better examples, but. It just happened to be the one that started the whole thing in New York that's still happening today, which I mean, I would contest is probably a good thing is happening.
Well, you don't always get to pick that breaking point. You know what I mean? That's
what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. Like maybe, Charlie, maybe the guy, maybe this newspaper wasn't the best newspaper to rally around and have be, maybe it is a little like, the KKK, getting shut down for hate speech and then having standing up for
the ACLU.
Well, that's the thing too. Is I make a distinction personally between hate speech.
Are you going, Dave?
Oh, right, that's fine.
Oh,
well, we can.
Okay, well, say. Good. So Dave's leaving us.
This is Dave signing off.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. You're saying, Craig. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think I make a distinction personally. And I'm not sure how I'd articulate it, but there's a distinction between hate speech directed at a religion and blasphemy. Like, where
you're just doing something against the rules of a religion because...
Well, blasphemy...
Right. Blasphemy is just the religion says you can't do it. Like
Blasphemy is... There are no... In the West, there are no blasphemy laws on the books.
Right. But I mean, if I went out for a Halloween as a pregnant nun...
Yeah,
I would probably offend some Catholics.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's hate speech. That's not like painting a swastika on a Jew's door. there's a difference.
Well, yeah, although.
So I mean, there's
although Jews,
there's making fun of sacred cows, you know what I mean, and then there's attacking somebody for their beliefs, and I think they're different. And I think if somebody says this is so sacred to me,
right?
Well, it's not sacred to me, and fuck that, you know what I mean? I can say that. I can say.
You can say, but you can say that about swastika.
No, because that's specifically a symbol of hate, where that's
okay.
That's an aggressive symbol. That's.
We made our laws. That's a place where we've made our laws.
Well, okay, fair enough. But the huge rule. You're going to talk, Dave. You have to say about the huge rule. I mean, there's just such a big difference between There's such a big difference between you know what I mean? Does France, which may be obsolete, nation states may be obsolete, right, but for the time being, it's where people live is nation states, you know. Does France get to decide what their rules are, or does a immigrant populace, you know, or a minority culture, whatever?
I think you're framing that in a way that I don't think is relevant. I mean,
Thanks,
I'm not sure that this happening in France makes any difference. These were guys who were political, who were satirist cartoonists poking a bear,
right?
And
they just happened to happen in France.
And it just happened in France. I don't think the laws of that country make much difference.
No, I don't. Well, I'm not. But whatever. You know what I mean? It happened in the West. You would agree that there's a difference between the West and the Islamic East.
There's obviously a difference, right?
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't care that it's in France. I'm just talking about it happened. It was perpetrated by someone who said, "I'm going to leave this place and go live in this place."
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then they went to this place, and this place, like whatever in the hell their reasons were for leaving this place and moving to this place, and they said, "Well, this place operates in this way, but I like the way that the place that I came from operates.
Right.
And so I am going to impose that in this place." There's a difference between, I think there's a difference between,
yeah, well, in a way, though, I think somebody kind of has the right to do that.
Yeah, until it's a violent crime or whatever. You know what I mean? I think that a violent crime, I think something, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm just saying a lot. It's like, I think like like I don't accept that there's any blame on the part of Charlie Hebdo. You know what I mean? I don't. I think that
I don't either.
Yeah, no.
But that doesn't necessarily make me agree with their speech.
I know, but they just aren't wrong at any capacity. Like I don't accept that. Like I think that in a way, if maybe, and I'm projecting this because I don't know them well,
right. Sure.
But it's like the sense is that a little bit they were trying to be freedom fighters on behalf of the cartoonists and satirists that have been murdered.
Much like the ACLU will defend the Ku Klux Klan because there's a principle involved that's more important than the details.
Exactly. And I think that was happening here, and I just think this is just really about a textbook example as possible of of I'm not sure what, but I mean
Got to open that textbook, Geoff.
Yeah, no, but it's a textbose example.
Look in the glossary; they'll have the definition there. Check out the glossary of that textbook,
and the index on the back. But yeah, I mean, dude, because it is. I am thinking of it in terms of a culture war, not one that I need to be a soldier and whatever. But I also don't think that the West is a combatant in it. I think the West is kind of a victim of this culture war. That's my sense.
Oh no, they're involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think any of this happened in a vacuum. No.
But again, there's no, American expats committing,
No, but Israel's pretty fucked.
Israel's very fucked. And I hate Israel.
Yeah. But they're a Western state.
Yeah, though they are the one really weird Western state that.
Yeah, they're an anomaly. You can't really base much on.
I hate that because they fuel this. They're a huge part of.
Well, and it's a major sticking point with the Muslim nations too, because it's in direct conflict with.
See, I would argue that they're kind of like a pseudo crypto Western state, though, because they're.
You know what they need? medicinal marijuana.
Yeah. You know what?
That actually, we're just calling it.
Well, you can call them pseudo, but I mean, we back them completely. So
I know. But I mean, you know what I mean. But I mean, the word Semitic literally means like Middle Eastern people.
Right, but I mean but that doesn't really mean anything today. I mean, that's not.
Well, it doesn't. It does. I mean, here I'll be a crazy person, but right, like, Jewish people are their own category. You know what I mean? They're not just Western people. They are not Europeans or whatever. I mean, they are now, but it's like they are up until very recently, they were a nomadic culture that didn't have a nation state.
Right. Well, I mean, you could argue that they did have Israel at some point back in history, but
yeah, but but you know, it just
have to open up your textbook to see what yours was.
It doesn't count, though. I mean,
right. Well,
count.
Yeah, but
and it's not the same state either. It's not like they closed that one down. And like if the Vatican closed, you know, and didn't exist for 4,000 years, and then some like Italian people went to somewhere near there and said we're starting the Vatican again, it's not the same place, you know.
No, but I mean, it means they had a nation at some point before, and then
I know, but yeah, it's true.
Right, but
I mean, and once upon a time, Native Americans were fucking like, you know, Europeans or whatever. Like
bring Babylon back, dude.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Mesopotamia,
that Tower
bitches.
of Babel. Waiting for that.
Was there? I heard some crazy ass thing where there was a rumor once upon a time that probably during the Gulf War,
Saddam Hussein was going to rebuild the Tower of Babel. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was so.
Kim Jong-un doesn't poop, by the way. Just letting you know.
Does he not?
Yeah, he does not poop.
Yeah,
he looks like somebody who doesn't poop.
Yeah, right. That's That's his problem.
He doesn't even have a butthole.
I think.
Looks like a flower.
That's the fucking craziest, weirdest place, man. Because he's at least the third generation of
the Kim Jongs.
Heretic. Yeah, whatever the word is.
Hereditary. Yeah.
Hereditary progenitor or whatever. You know what I mean? Like he's fucking
the royal line kind of thing.
Yeah. Of the people's, you know, working supposed, you know, Marxist supposed
the great successor or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's just the goofiest fucking thing in the world. Like the political societal philosophy that arose to counter like Tsarism, and he's like, you know, a czar. You know?
Right.
Anyway, fucking. I'll tell you what, dude. I hate another one. I was driving over here, listened to a bit from the dude who was the original editor publisher of The Onion. I don't know, I didn't catch his name, but he recorded this thing and like they played it on NPR, right? I was gearing up, I was listening to it. And he's like, you know, nowadays, you know, he had some comment about how there was one skinny girl with tattoos who was worked at the desk by the front door. And they used to joke that she was the only protection from, they used to joke she was the only protection from some kind of radical militant coming in and killing them. And he says, now that joke makes me sick. You know, I'm so disgusted. And so, you know, and then he said, and this is one of the things that really irking me, right? Is because everyone's in such a hurry to say that these guys who did this weren't an example of Muslims, or they weren't, you know, they don't really represent Islam or whatever. And this guy says that these guys, he said these people are no more a representation of Islam than the Westboro Baptist Church is of Christians.
Right.
And of course, inevitably, like that analogy gets raised, right? Sure. But it isn't right in scale, and it isn't right in tone.
It isn't right in scale. It isn't right in tone, but
scale. But I think the only reasons it's not that there's any inherent properties of the religion of Islam that makes it more prone to producing violent people than Christianity does.
Maybe not.
No, it's that it's literally like the areas of the world that they come from.
Right.
Like the area of the world that's more war torn right now just happens to be Muslim.
We have
like I said before, if we had the same shit going on right here, if we had like various Christian religious sects like warring within the states, and you know all the kind of same shit, you would see a lot more Christian extremism happening in the world today.
Right. Sure. Honestly, there's in the U.S. right. Yeah. I would say that there's plenty. If we were just talking about Okay, let's not take 9/11 out of the equation because it's just going to fuck up all the numbers, right? Right. But in general, you don't have a lot, at least to my knowledge, a lot of American citizen Muslims who are out committing crimes or terrorist acts in the name of Islam.
Right. There's a lot of Muslims in the U.S. and there's not a whole lot of Muslim extremists in the U.S.
Right. Yeah, and I would say if we if we tallied the numbers up, and you weren't. I mean, like I said, 9/11 was a big high score. But besides that, you could probably look at the numbers and say there have been more Christian abortion bombings than there have been Muslim extremist violence in the U.S.
Right. And then on the other side, like you look at. I think I'm right in saying that Jordan is a Christian nation majorly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
One of those, and like
Michael Jordan.
Well, what I'm saying, one of the things you can say about a lot of Muslim nations is that there's a high rate of things like female circumcision.
Right.
But
they take exception to that. They say no, that's an African.
Right, but that's right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's that area of the world because there's Christian nations in that area of the world that still do that.
Right. No, I concede that it transcends religion. You know what I mean? Religion isn't not a part of it, but it isn't the only part of it.
I think I think you could blame religion as a whole and maybe people's propensity for believing things that that you can't really prove or whatever, and taking such a hardline stance on that.
Right. You see what you're doing there, though. Yeah. You say. I mean, you see what you're doing there is you say, well, no, it's not religion, not religion, unless it's all religion, then it is. But
no. I'm saying religion does play. I didn't say it wasn't religion. I say it definitely does play a part of it.
Right.
But all religion does that. Right. What I'm saying is
you're just in such a hurry
excuse.
though to not. I don't want to say Islam is. I think it's instinctively.
Again. I think that there's definitely a case to be made that in this point in history, there are the Islamic extremists are more extreme than any of the other religious extremists,
and they outnumber the other ones too. Yeah, that's
yes, fine,
right.
but I'm not sure that's.
But here we are.
Always been the case in history.
I know, but here we are because that's where we live is right here and now.
Understood.
Yeah,
understood. Right. But to say that it's Islam as a whole, to paint it with that brush, you could say that about Christianity at a different time in history. But I'm not sure that it would be accurate.
And if you were right, then you were right. You know what I mean? Like if that time existed and you were living in that time, then it would be a legitimate criticism.
But there would be plenty of Christians who don't fall into that category. There would be plenty of Muslims who don't fall into that category.
I know.
So, is it really fair to say that? I mean,
I think so. I think that these events just prove how fair it is to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is fair to say about the religion, not about like all people that make up the religion.
Of course not. The way, yeah.
But I mean, how many Muslims are there in France? I mean, they didn't all rise up. They didn't all show up at the building. I mean,
I'm not saying all people that make up the religion. Again, I'm saying the religion, because if you take the religion for what it is, the text, that it is, that's all that it is, really. Outside of people that get together.
But what would happen? What would happen?
What I'm saying is that it's a text, and it says certain things in there. Right. Just like the Bible says certain things in there too. But
what would happen? Just as a thought experiment here, if some, let's say, The Onion, some satirist, U.S. publication, made it a point to every single week make cartoons talking about how awesome abortion was.
Right.
Do you think sooner or later some Christians show up to their building and blow them up?
It very possibly.
Very possibly. Right. Yeah. So to say, part of it you can say maybe the religious part of it, that specific religious part of it, but also the provocations are also unique. You don't have those provocations.
Well, but see, okay. Well, first, I don't know that at least today, and like in today's climate, that somebody would bomb The Onion because they're making cartoons about They might. You see the occasional bombing of an actual abortion clinic or an attempt at something like that.
Sure.
But I don't think times are desperate enough in the U.S.
That was just an example, but
right. No, but you could, what I'm saying, I don't think
off an extremist. You could
I know you
find
can piss off an
somebody.
extremist. I'm not saying you can't. What I'm saying is, I don't think times are desperate enough in the U.S. that there are enough people out there that are so clung to their religion outside of the rest of life. Everyone, basically, people make enough money here to not have to like.
There's some angry fucking people though.
I know there's angry people. I know there's angry people, but they have a lot more to lose. They have a lot more to lose if they're going to go do something like blow up an abortion clinic.
No, man. I mean, there. What is it? There was kind of a hubbub about the Virgin Mary. There's a painting of the Virgin Mary, and someone throws elephant dung at it, or that was a.
Or there was the Piss Christ also.
Well, yeah, but nobody got shot over any of that.
Exactly. No, that's exactly.
No, nobody did. Right. But
no, they did get shot over that.
No, nobody did. But what I'm saying is that. What I'm trying to say is that that's not necessarily the same kind of provocation, because I'm not sure it's hitting the button in the same way.
You're right, but this is because there's a cultural difference.
But there may be a button that's not getting pushed that would do the same fucking thing if we.
That's. I mean, this is the issue, though. Is that right? It's because, and one of the guys I listened to, he makes the point about whatever the South Park dudes, the Mormon. The Joseph Smith musical, right? It's just been playing forever without incident, right? I mean,
the Book of Mormon, yeah.
No, and it's totally satirical, and it's you know what I mean. It is not flattering. It's very unflattering,
right?
But nobody's afraid
that the LDS is going to show up.
That the LDS is going to show up, right?
Right.
Because the LDS is just culturally better.
Well, okay,
I don't know
yes,
better.
They're culturally not as violent.
They're culturally better off.
But the resulting you know what I mean? Like who do you?
Here's what I'm saying. If Utah was a barren wasteland of like shelled out buildings and no food and all this shit, and that's where all the Mormons came from, and everyone was shitting on Mormons, you would see some Mormons coming out.
Yeah, but you're painting. I mean, you act as if the Middle East isn't rich with oil, and
Oh, I'm sure. No, it is.
I mean, there's
yeah, but not where these guys are from.
Well, these guys were from Paris, as I understand.
Well,
I mean, so
fine, but yeah,
there are. I'm not saying there's no rich people in the Middle East, but the majority of them are not.
I think that.
I think the level of poverty between here and there is probably very different, except for places like Saudi Arabia, but that's not where the shit is happening.
Dubai, right?
But Saudi Arabia is hugely rich, but that's not where the shit is happening either.
I know, but that's where the
9/11 bombers came from. So,
that's where they came from, but not. But then they went.
I feel what you mean.
It wasn't war torn. I mean, it wasn't.
No, but then they left Saudi Arabia and went somewhere else to train and
be freedom fighters.
Yeah.
And that whole culture of that thing that they went to go join came out of.
You got people from here trying to go join ISIS too because they're
right.
Yeah, but I think their motivations are different.
Their motivations are different.
No, I don't think so.
Absolutely.
No, because the people like Saddam. What's his name? I almost said Obama. Bin Laden was filthy rich, spoiled brat. Right. I mean, but he was an idealist who said, he's regarded heroic for that reason.
Right, but all the people that
it wasn't out of desperation.
Yeah, and he said, keep your wealth. I'm going to go with the people and fight the good fight against.
Right, but all the people that he rallied were not. That's the thing. Like he wasn't.
Yeah, but
he was the exception to the rule, not the like.
No,
as far as being.
I hear what you're saying.
No, because the Taliban is not made up of a bunch of affluent or ex-affluent people from Saudi Arabia.
But the U.S. Army isn't made up of a bunch of affluent people either. I mean, that's not where the fighting people ever come from.
But the army itself has lots of money.
Yeah,
well, no, but that's not where they recruit from. I mean,
there's definitely different motivations. I mean, a 14-year-old suicide bomber in Palestine is not the same as some rich 16-year-old girl who's leaving her parents to go fight for ISIS.
Right,
way different motivations. Right,
of course.
But that's not to say that there aren't crazy people of all walks of life. I mean, and obviously, oppression and rough times, and especially if it's multi-generational for a region
course.
is going to take a toll and impact on the psyche of people and be
the
a breeding
itself,
ground.
the general
and be a breeding ground for that kind of
culture,
thing.
right?
Absolutely. But
we give but that's another way I think in which we give them a little bit too much of a pass, where their culture is intolerant. You know what I mean? Like it isn't in that sense. It's so ironic that progressive people defend such a unprogressive population.
Fair.
You know what I mean? The same people that, you know what I mean? Like any place where, with Sharia law, right, is a place where it is not cool to be gay.
You're right. The same people that would cry Islamophobism a lot would also
get their head cut off by a lot of. Well, I mean, they would be targets for extremism. I mean, they're not.
Yeah, they certainly wouldn't agree with their rule set. They would not be like, oh yeah, this Sharia law fucking fine. Yeah, right. No.
I'm into this.
Yeah.
Holiday in Cambodia.
No, but yeah, what I'm saying is that they might. Yeah, you're right. They would defend Islam, but not necessarily defend Christianity for the same thing.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. And one of the guys I like, he says, once upon a time Christianity was that fragile or whatever, or you know what I mean, or again, it transcends religion. You know what I mean? But that Western culture or whatever, burn people at stakes and shit. You know what I mean? Like, fair enough. They outgrew it. It's in the past. They don't do that anymore. ISIS crucifies people that, you know what I mean? They're suspected non-believers or whatever. And, but I mean, and sure, not all Muslims do it, but you do not hear a legitimate, nearly the outcry that you should from, you know what I mean? Like in the example of Westboro Baptist Church, right? They're this completely insignificant group that is, as I understand it, primarily one family. Like
they're like a handful of people who are just way too offensive and outspoken and get way too much attention for who they actually are.
I mean, and then but people, people in the West, you know what I mean, mount counter protests to them. You know what I mean? I know, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? They're when in the Eastern world, you know what I mean? They're burning whomever in effigy and the flag and everything else. Right. They are not met with counter protest. It isn't like to scale. You know what I mean?
No, it's not. And comparisons are always limited because,
But I mean, in this case, just out of line. I mean, just
sure. See the Westboro Baptist people, I believe I've been to counter protests. I've taken my kids and we've made funny signs and it was great. I have since changed my mind about that. And I think,
good.
Absolutely.
You don't want to give them the attention.
No. I think ignoring them is the absolute best strategy.
Right.
Just completely ignoring them.
Right.
Complete blackout.
Because that's their bread and butter. I mean, it's just
that's what they do. You're not showing them anything. They've written that into their equation.
Are you? You're proving that they're right is what you're doing. I mean,
I'm playing into their hand.
Yeah, as far as they're concerned, it's like if we weren't really God's chosen people, then why would all these people be here to condemn us?
And I'm not sure it's even that. I think we're just letting their message get farther by yelling against it when they would have no voice if nobody cared.
Is what you're saying that we, like people in the West, are the type of people that would counter protest our own religious extremists, and whereas Islam, you're not seeing that happening. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Okay. Well, because they don't, and of course I don't know. It's not like I fucking read Islamic newspapers, or whatever. You know what I mean? But it's like my sense is, and I could be totally wrong, but my sense is, I mean, I feel like this was true for 9/11. Even, you know what I mean? It was like, well, this is an abominable act. These people should never do this, but we need to take the reasons into consideration. We need to let this start a discussion. We need to, you know what I mean? And instead of outright condemning it correctly as being an obscenity.
Yes, but just thinking out loud here, playing devil's advocate, right? Is the plight of Palestinians or Muslims in certain parts of the world is different than God hates fags. Like on a substantive level. Right. So you don't.
However,
it's not the same.
You're right. However, Muhammad with the flower in his ass is a lot like God hates fags. I mean, in that it's
right. It's certainly nothing to get worked up over. Like, I mean,
it's like lives aren't at stake.
Right.
You know what I mean? It isn't. It's just. Yeah. Right. It's that.
Well, the other thing is that at least here in the U.S., I mean, it's not so much really like the backlash against God hates fags. You know, the counter protests aren't necessarily a religious thing. It isn't the Christian nation rising up and saying, "Hey, this isn't a part of us."
No, but it is.
Right.
It's. I would say probably even half, if not more, atheists. You know.
Oh, sure. I'm sure.
You know,
but it is the predominant cultural group of the.
But here's what I'm saying: among Christians, you might get people that would counter protest that. I mean, amongst like devout Christians or people that would really proclaim their Christianity.
Yeah.
You might get some counter protests, but I think a lot, honestly, what you would get, and I've been a part of the whole church thing. Like I've seen this happen where, you know, they'll in mixed company say things like, well, you know, of course not, you know, gay people deserve the rights of anybody else.
Yes.
But then get them in the room with just Christians. And they'll be like, well, you know, maybe, you know, they don't deserve to.
Kind of does hate fags.
Well,
they don't deserve to die, but you know,
right.
Well, no, but that is,
and that's a lot. But
right. But of course, you know what I mean. That's their.
But Westboro Baptist isn't killing anybody either. They're just being assholes.
Exactly.
So it's
and that's the thing. And you'll find virtually no Christians or otherwise who would defend their or who wouldn't strongly object to them, like protesting funerals
of dead children and soldiers.
Right. You know
people had absolutely nothing to do with it just because they're trying to be assholes.
Just because they want to get
they want to get the news.
But what I'm saying is that
and also
in Muslim nations,
right,
you don't have as high of a population of extra religious people. You know, there's not a lot of atheists, not a lot of like other religious.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
So you're not going to.
It's a shittier culture, man.
Well, no, I don't. Well,
I know. I'm pissing you off when I say it, but it is. I mean, it is. It's just less progressive. It's less. The things that. That's the irony, right? Is that the people who, you know, nobody's a bigger fan of the crazy conservative Orthodox Islam than are progressives, you know.
Right. And Obama specifically.
Yeah.
Well, because he is one.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is newer.
It is what, newer?
Newer. The religion is.
Well, there's a human tendency to root for the underdog. Which they can be seen in this case, right?
Well,
and you know,
yes,
right or wrong, right? But
yes.
From our perspective,
yes,
right. And it gets complicated because there's.
I don't think it's as much they're rooting for Islam; they're rooting against the West.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's, and if you talk to someone who isn't as sophisticated because you guys are further left than me or whatever, if I use that term, but sure. If you talk to someone who's less sophisticated than you, or just frankly a dummy, you know what I mean? Which is the next step, you know? But,
right.
But you know, and they'll say like, well, like I fucking dated this stupid ass chick, and she was like, well, if it wasn't for all the children starving in the street, if it wasn't for all the conservative Christians taking their food or whatever. I mean, it was like, and it's just kind of like, nonsense. That's not really.
It's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, none of that's.
Really everybody's going to have a boogeyman where they, you know.
That is.
Right. People really like to choose a team, you know.
And I just say it's the wrong team, man. If you're picking the Islam, and I don't mean the shooters. I don't mean the shooters. I mean.
Well, I mean, it's not. What I'm saying is, it's not even a matter of a team. You know, it's like people. What I'm saying is that people like to feel like they're a part. You know, people like to.
Yes.
You know, people.
Well,
it's really convenient for people. I mean, it's why religion is really popular. You know, it's why a lot of just ideologies in general that people stand up for, or that people really get fired up over.
Right.
You know, because people want to feel like they belong. They want that. It's easy. It's convenient for them to have this sort of, you know, predefined set of ideologies that they can just spend their time defending, and being, you know, having basically a support group of people that agree with them.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And then people and they don't put much more thought into it beyond that. It's like they stop at the part that makes them feel good, and then
right.
That's it.
No, you're right. Of course. It's funny. I don't know what it says about me, but I feel like when it comes to, and I've been, watching YouTube videos, kind of studying like European debates and
real
stuff.
research. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I get
YouTube
my news. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, like basically like their cable news in Europe, and I mean a lot of that shit. But just in general, like the it's a huge thing right now. The people from the Arabic world or whomever they're from, coming to Western Europe, and moving in there. Like there's some little clip of John Cleese, right? Who and people that think like me love this clip because it's supports whatever. But he says he goes, I've been to London, I don't recognize it anymore. I don't see anyone there who looks like a Londoner to me or something along those lines. He's trying to be diplomatic, but he's saying the streets are crowded. It looks like a bazaar in Saudi Arabia. It doesn't look like London anymore. And if you know what I mean, if they have a valuable culture, then so does London and England or whatever. I find that I just feel related to or akin to the West over the East. Like when I hear about this act, I get mad and I think of myself in line with the people of France. But when it comes to the people of France versus the people of England, I feel akin to the people of England because they speak my language and maybe I'm, got a little bit more ancestry from England than I do from France. But then when it comes, if there's ever a debate or a point of order between England and the United States, I find myself identifying myself in my in-group as being the United States. And then, of course, I'm a Northwestern United Stateser. And then ultimately, I'm a Tacoman.
That sounds really relative and not very absolute. So,
yeah. Well, no, I mean, yeah.
I mean, obviously, it would be ridiculous to say that, like, in all matters, Northwesterners are going to be superior to the rest of the world because that's where I'm from.
No, and right. Which is why I wouldn't say that. But that is where my. Well, I mean, it's a in-group thing. I mean, I think
it's your tribe, it's your family,
right? Tribe, then my whatever.
But we don't have. That's not as strong here as it is in other places.
No, God, no.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't.
No,
because we don't have a need for it.
No, exactly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
No, we're all islands now. I mean, it's like you have to go out of your way to make social contact with people. Even
right.
I mean,
yeah, I was an hour late coming here just because.
That's right.
Because I was on Facebook.
I mean, internet porn, man.
But yeah, I don't know what I was saying. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sure, it's as good a stopping place as any.
Yeah.
Or any,
Yeah.
You guys want to go get crunk?
Yeah, I think we